Some of you may be asking, why are you talking to us, a group of students, about AIDS? You know us. We're straights. We're heterosexuals. We're not sexually promiscuous. We're not drug abusers. And besides, some of us aren't even sexually active. Well, we've discovered a few things in studying the AIDS epidemic. And the most important thing we've discovered is no one ever again need be infected by the AIDS virus. All they have to know is how to protect themselves. Honestly, some of you are sexually active, and we're worried about you. And some of you aren't. But whether you're sexually active or not, you probably know someone who is. It's an older brother or sister or a cousin, a neighbor, or a friend at school. So whether for yourself or for someone else, we want you to have the facts on AIDS. What we're going to share in the next few minutes is going to save your life, and it's going to save the life of somebody you love.
I was a mixed up, confused teenager. Very emotional. Felt like nobody understood what I was going through. I was the only one in the world that had any pain or discomfort in my life, which I found out later on wasn't true at all, that a lot of us have those same feelings. But I was one of those teenagers that decided to act out on those feelings. And because I was not able to express myself, I think that made me turn to drugs. I never finished high school because of my drug abuse. I was too mixed up and confused. I had lost all sense of reality and was very out of touch with my life and any responsibility.
Well, in school, I had plenty of friends. I wasn't real popular, but I had plenty of friends. The years when I was learning about myself were a little rough. I've always had self-doubts. I've always, you know, sometimes I'm a very positive thinker, I believe. But a lot of times when it comes to self-image, it hasn't been as high as it should be.
I was really different in high school. I was a very different person. I was very, I was heavy. And so, for some reason, I just didn't seem to fit in with any of the regular crowds. I fit in with the misfits. And so, I had a very unusual group of friends. I used to, I know, one year I was involved in the Math Teachers of America Club, because I really enjoyed math.
Now, I know that some of you are uneasy, you're uncomfortable talking about AIDS. But I gotta tell you, AIDS is not going to go away. It's going to be with us for the rest of our lives, and we're going to be dealing with its consequences for the rest of our lives. Now and for some time to come, AIDS is the #1 health problem in America. Now, what happens when your body is attacked by an AIDS virus? The immune system doesn't work anymore. It's been compromised. And what happens with AIDS is people become very sick with all sorts of very bizarre, rare diseases that we classify under one heading called opportunistic infections. You see, they wouldn't have an opportunity with a healthy immune system. It's only with a damaged immune system. All sorts of diseases which we very rarely see. Pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, PCP for short, a very deadly pneumonia. KS, Kaposi sarcoma, it's a form of cancer and a very deadly cancer. Lymphoma is another form of cancer. There are attacks on the neurological system, that's your brain and central nervous system, attacks on the blood system. There are diseases that go directly to the brain, such as toxoplasmosis. It's bad news.
I've dealt with a lot of severe rashes. Cracking and bleeding of the skin, like in creases, you know, like under your arms or between your legs. Or
I started getting fevers and night sweats and achy joints.
sometimes you get an infection in your mouth where your gums almost sort of swell up and get like little babies get, you know, like they get thrush, they get, what do they call it? That milky white kind of look that they get on their mouth. That's what people with AIDS get a lot of times.
And I've been kind of anemic for over 3 years. But other than that, I had no problems, no symptoms, no night sweats, no headaches, none of the symptoms. But, I did have a little problem with lymph nodes.
And fatigue and tiredness, that's been the hardest for me.
Sometimes you start feeling draggy, like months before you're diagnosed. You don't really notice it, because I think it started working on me even sooner than that, because I remember I used to go to if I wasn't working at the disco, I was dancing at the disco. I started to notice that my endurance on the dance floor, I couldn't dance for as long a period of time as I was used to. And I would have never said, oh, I must be coming down with AIDS at that point.
Well, originally when I went in the hospital, I just couldn't breathe. I went to work on a Friday. Saturday I had a little trouble breathing. Monday I could hardly breathe at all, but I could still get around. And I went to see my doctor, and I guess he suspected. But Tuesday morning when I woke up, his receptionist, when I called, said, have you been jogging? And I said, no, I was laying in bed, flat on my back, and I couldn't breathe. So they admitted me. And
I've almost died twice from the disease. I had pneumonia so severe on two different occasions that they were ready. They were ready to ship me out. They did not think that I was going to make it.
Well, by Friday, I was so weak from the fevers and the sweating that I couldn't even get out of bed to get a glass of water to take the aspirin with from my fevers. So I called up my doctor and I said, I can't take it anymore, I gotta go into the hospital. So he said, okay, I'll call and get a room for you. You call an ambulance and we'll take you in. So, the ambulance came. He took me in and they did a bronchoscopy, which is a type of lung biopsy test. And that evening they were telling me I had pneumocystis pneumonia. I knew that meant I had AIDS. And most people asked me what my reaction was when I was diagnosed, and it was relief that finally we found out what it was and we could start working on, getting it cleared up. I'd worry about the rest once I could get out of bed and out of the hospital.
And I want you to understand something about these symptoms, because so many times I have people said, oh my goodness, I have a sore throat, or I'm short of breath, or I've lost some weight and all. We are talking here about profound symptoms. In studying AIDS for so long, we've discovered that people who have been infected by the virus can be put into 3 categories. And these categories are, number 1, those who've been infected, but they don't have any symptoms of illness. The second category are those who've been infected by the virus, but their immune system has been somewhat damaged, and they are having symptoms of illness, but not necessarily life-threatening illness. And then there's the third group, which you hear about the most. And those are our friends with full-blown AIDS. These are people who have been infected by the virus, but whose immune systems have been devastated. And they have contracted one or more of the opportunistic infections. And the record so far is that all of these friends have died. So how is the AIDS virus transmitted? What we were worried about was that the AIDS virus indeed could be transmitted through casual contact. Like the shaking hands or getting sneezed on or something like that. Well, thank God it is a blood-borne virus, because if it could be spread through casual contact, millions more would be infected by the virus. But because it's a blood-borne virus, it is really hard to transmit. So how is the AIDS virus transmitted? Number 1, I want you to know that it doesn't discriminate on the basis of gender, whether you're a man or woman, sexual orientation, whether you're gay, straight, bisexual. doesn't discriminate on the basis of color. It is colorblind. Doesn't care whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian. Doesn't care whether you live on a farm or whether you live in a big city. It doesn't care whether you're from a certain social class or a certain educational level. If you're involved in unsafe activities, you're at risk of being infected. You see, that's the way the AIDS epidemic spread so quickly. It skyrocketed because unsuspecting people who didn't think, you know, that they had a health problem at all were infected, and they infected others. So who's spreading the virus? It's people who don't know they've been infected. They've never felt better. They don't have any symptoms of illness. They're going to the gym 3 times a week to aerobics class. They're in school or they're on the job. They don't have any health problems at all, but one. They've been infected by the AIDS virus. Let me tell you something. Most scientists believe that once you've been infected, you are going to remain infected for the rest of your life, and you're probably infectious.
Well, I know I contracted it through sexual intercourse because I hadn't done any IV drugs, and I hadn't received a blood transfusion any time prior to my illness. And so the only other way you contract it is through sexual transmission.
And at the time I started to get sick or not feel well, I had no idea what was going on with me because, of course, I didn't think that I just didn't think that I could have AIDS. I just didn't think that it was possible. At that time, there still weren't a whole lot of intravenous drug users who were coming down with AIDS. Now it's getting to be more and more and more and more.
I was going with a bisexual male back in 1980. I had a relationship with him for a year, and we were engaged towards the end of the relationship. And also, maybe about a year or so later, started dating another bisexual male. I can't pinpoint it on anybody specific, and I really don't want to. I don't think it's necessary to do that. People ask me if I'm angry. And I'm not angry because I was just as responsible as they were. And I think we were as responsible as any two adults could be in a sexual relationship. And I never heard the word AIDS when I was going out with these men. Neither had they. Nobody had, because it was around 1980. Because the incubation period is so long, 3 years later, I popped up with AIDS.
And so what we're talking about is unsafe activities. Do any of you know about safe sex? Some people choose to call it low-risk sex. But we're talking about the use of condoms. Whether the intercourse is anal or whether the intercourse is vaginal or oral doesn't make any difference. We believe that you can become infected. Why? Because they have isolated the virus in vaginal secretions, in rectal tissues, in semen, in urine. They have isolated it in the oral cavity. So what we're talking about is if you're involved in unsafe, unprotected sexual activity, you could be infected by the AIDS virus. Let's say that 10 friends of ours are living unsafely, and they become exposed to a situation where they could be infected by the AIDS virus. And here's one way that it could possibly work. Let's say that a gay man has intercourse with a bisexual man. Now that gay man is infected, and he infects that bisexual man, who over a period of time has intercourse with a completely heterosexual young woman. And she becomes infected, and that young woman has intercourse with a young man, and that young man becomes infected. And you go on down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you say to yourself, how did this nice young Catholic girl get AIDS? How did this nice young Protestant man, he's a jock, how did he get AIDS? How did this young Hispanic fellow get AIDS? Well, let me tell you something. AIDS just doesn't happen to you. Your deliberate actions ensure infection. We believe that the best policy is play it safe. Do not come into any immediate contact with body fluids such as semen or blood that have the highest concentration of the AIDS virus. If you come into immediate contact with the semen of an infected individual, and I'm talking about intercourse here now, any kind of sexual activity where semen is being exchanged, semen is being deposited, you possibly could be infected. And so therefore, we're telling you that you have to protect yourself. You have got to insist that condoms are worn. Hey, you just can't trust anybody when they say, oh, I'm healthy, you know, I've never felt better, I don't have any symptoms of illness, I don't have any health problem that I could transmit sexually. Because remember, in this AIDS epidemic, it's unsuspecting people who are doing the infecting. It is not uncommon in the sexual act for there to be microscopic fissures, those little tears, little breaks in very important, very fragile tissue, whether it's in the mouth, whether it's in the vagina, whether it's in the rectal area, whether it's on the genitalia. And that is all the virus is waiting for, is a small window of opportunity to infect. We know that with the exchange of body fluids, whether that exchange is from a man to a man, from a woman to a man, from a man to a woman, we know that there has been a transmission of virus back and forth. And that scares us to death. And so that's why we say you're going to have to protect yourself. And how do you do that? You protect yourself through the use of condoms. Whether you're a male or whether you're a female, you insist that condoms are used in sexual activity. Let's talk about the other body fluid where they have found such high concentrations of the AIDS virus. Blood. And let me tell you why. It's through IV drug abuse. How is that? IV drug abuse, intravenous drugs. It's very simple. When a person injects a drug into his or her arm, that person is getting blood on the needle or in the needle. Takes it out and then shares the needle with another person who is going to inject him or herself with drugs at the same time that that next person is injecting him or herself with IV drugs. Heroin, cocaine, speed, you name it. That person is also injecting him or herself with the AIDS virus.
We would go into a room or someone's home or apartment or wherever after we'd acquired our drugs, and if there was only one set of needles, you could possibly see maybe 4 or 5 of us sharing the same needle. We would just sort of, you know, when I was done tying off and injecting myself, then I would go into the bathroom. I would rinse the needle lightly, you know. You'd be a little sanitary, but no, not like a doctor or someone else would be. And you would pass it to the next person.
So what's our advice? Number 1, we'd like you to get off drugs. And we know you can't do it alone. We know you're going to need a lot of support, a lot of encouragement, and we're here for that. Besides, be honest, think about it. When you're injecting drugs into your body, do you really know what you're putting into your body? Let me tell you something. I can guarantee you that if not already, someday soon, that when you inject a drug into your body, at the same time, you're also going to be injecting the AIDS virus into your body.
So I would suggest that if I don't advocate drug use, but if you are going to use drugs, don't share needles with people. Protect yourself.
Well, right now I'm doing considerably well. My energy level's been better, and I've been eating better. And I put on a couple of pounds, but, you know, prior to that, the summer was a real rough summer for me, and I'd gotten down to 100 pounds, and I didn't eat for a long time.
I sleep quite a bit. I need my rest now. And, but I have good periods now where, you know, I can get up and I accomplish a lot of things during the day. But then sometimes, if I kind of wear myself down, I end up maybe sleeping a whole day away now, just resting. And that's what a day's like now. So we'll see. I have to build my stamina back up. I have to build some stamina back up.
My husband is devastated. He's had a very difficult time with it. I must say that he stuck by me. He's supportive of me 100% in everything that I choose to do and whatever mode that I choose to handle my disease. And he has a very difficult time. It's changed our life completely. It really has changed our life. It's changed our sex life. It's changed quite a few things. You know, we don't take each other for granted like we used to. Personally, it's changed in many positive modes because I've learned the value of life. And it is difficult to express to someone else who has not been in my position how I value it now.
So where does this leave you? It leaves you with probably the most adult decision you've ever had to make in your life. And that is a decision about protection. Are you going to protect yourself and those you love, or are you not? Has nothing to do with trust. I wish it did. Because remember, the people who are doing the infecting do not know they've been infected. And so if someone says to you, oh, I'm fine, I've never been better, I don't have any kind of disease that can be transmitted sexually, it's not that you don't trust them, it's that you know that the AIDS virus is out there just waiting for an opportunity to infect. So if you're sexually active, what's our advice? Number one, condoms must be used. You must insist upon the use of condoms, whether you're a man or a woman. And just think about it. If you always use condoms, you are never going to contract syphilis or gonorrhea, many of which strains are now penicillin resistant. You're never going to get hepatitis B from sexual intercourse, and hepatitis B can kill you. You are never going to get chlamydia, and you know that causes infertility or sterility. By playing it safe, you can save your own life and save yourself a lot of grief. So whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're gay, whether you're bisexual, whether you're straight, until there is a vaccine or a cure, our only hope for a healthy life is prevention.
Because it's not just a gay disease. It's not just a problem that homosexual men have. It can be transmitted between heterosexuals.
If you're dating someone that you know is using intravenous drugs, you could also contract it that way. It's not something to be fooled with. It's taken many, many lives. And many of my friends have died of AIDS. And it's not a pretty sight.
And I would like to say to all the kids in America that for educational purposes is to protect yourself. I'm not knocking what you're doing, and I'm not telling you not to. All I'm telling you is that you need to protect yourself. Use some kind of protection, because if you don't care about yourself, nobody else will.
I just really want to express that it's so important to value your life and don't waste it on drugs. And don't waste it on intravenous drug use above and beyond all things, because it is more devastating than just about anything and more addicting.
A lot of kids that do experiment, it only takes once. Well, I shouldn't say it only takes once, but once might be enough to expose you to the virus. And you just have to protect yourself. Please protect yourself.
It's a hard thing to fathom, and it's just like everybody says, oh, it's horrible, but it would never happen to me. But it does. You know, it's like, and when it does, it's just shocking and horrifying. And I don't think it's worth getting into a sexual relationship, especially at your age, that can ruin the rest of their lives.
I'm 30 years old, I'm married, and I cannot have children because of the disease that I have. Who knows how long I'll be able to live? I could get sick tomorrow and die next week.
So, one of the big things with this disease is you have to think positive. And it's a little bit harder for me to think positive these days, but I'm still thinking positive, thinking that they'll find a cure, thinking that I'll live long enough to benefit from that cure. So I'm thinking positive.